And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon. Today I am talking with, dear friends of mine, Mike Davidson, his son Jeffrey, and their dear friend and cohort in crime, Frank. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today.
Oh,
Thank you for having
yeah,
us, Mike.
yeah, we appreciate it, Mike. Thank
So,
you.
so y'all got to understand, this goes back generations, right? We have been friends for many
Generations.
years.
True.
Absolutely. Abraham had Isaac, and Isaac had Jacob.
That's
Yes,
right.
That's exactly right.
yes, yes.
So, well, yeah, this goes back a long time because Mike Davidson was a dear friend of mine from church. That's where I first met him, and then he actually was my first client for Paperback Expert. He was my first author, and he's the one who gave me he gave me my start in business. Really, he had the guts to hire me as a marketing consultant. He had the guts to say, yeah, I'll write a book with you, Michael. And since then, he's been a mentor and a friend. And I'll let Mike tell you the whole story, but there's a lot that goes in there. But what Mike's doing now is so incredibly powerful and important for business owners that I wanted him here to help us understand, how do you develop leaders within your organization who will not only lead, but will help develop leaders underneath them to grow your company. That's what Mike's and his company does. He's got some guys with him that I'm going to let Mike take it from here and tell me, Mike. I mean, your company is leader shift, and you're shifting leadership and mindsets. But tell me, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
Well, before we get started, we're going to go back to what you just mentioned, because one of the things I'd want your audience to know when I started this business relationship with Michael DeLon, I owned an automotive repair shop in Central Arkansas. And one of the things that he helped me do is make the Mercedes dealership not happy with me.
I know this story.
Yeah, well, we dominated the market in servicing Mercedes is what we ended up doing because of Michael's effort. I believed in Michael, not because I thought he had this great, wonderful plan. I believed in Michael because of who he is.
Thank you, brother.
And so that was number one. And I'm as proud to say that I was his first customer, and just glad to be here. And then also, because of his efforts with me, we helped 19 other small shops across the country write their own book. If you remember, 19 of them. Yeah.
Isn't that so much fun when you think about that, and the growth and the impact and the stories I've heard from some of those shops of how they've grown and served customers just using their book that we helped put together.
And even that book right now, even though I don't own that company anymore, I sold it in 2023. That company is still handing that book out to customers because of its content of educating them about what it is to take care of a car.
Yeah. And yeah, it's so cool. You've used it
however many years
well.
ago it was, right? That's right. It just keeps going.
It does. Yeah. Over a decade of handing that book out to people to gain clients, to educate people. And that's the value of having a book. And we'll do a podcast on that one of these days. But
maybe so.
But because all that really happened, though, Mike, because of you and your leadership and how you sold your company. We need to get into that, because you only were able to sell your company because of the leaders you developed within that company. So let's talk about that. How'd you get here?
So it first started, I can go back to 2010 when I was sitting in my office at Parkway Automotive, because I'll have to just bring that into this journey in this podcast, because we know it's so much a part of me for 25 years. And I remember as distinctly as if it were yesterday, I walked out of my office and I looked at my staff, and with putting my finger on the desk, I said, I am no longer going to run this company alone anymore. And I walked back in my office and I sat down, and I realized they had no idea what I was talking about. They had no idea. And then with further reflection, I realized that I was the reason. It was my leadership was the reason I was the only one running the silly place.
Yeah.
So I began a journey of developing leaders within the organization very intentionally, with hiring processes and my own leadership training. And it literally started with what was going on inside in my room, my head, my heart, about what it means to be a leader and how I looked at others and valued them, and that caused me to go on this journey of leadership development. And yes, one of those people that worked there for 13 years is the one who bought the company. So even in that, the I discovered that the person that's going to have the most value in your company is one that you developed within your company. If you want to get the most for your business, if you're going to sell your business, sell it to someone who works there, who you've developed, and they will pay a higher price for it than someone outside who's only trying to buy it for the least amount of money because of the value of the business. All right, so that's just a side note on the business side of it. But ultimately, I wanted to develop them to become leaders. And so I began that journey with developing myself as a leader. And then you might just say that I've taken it on the road now, because you might have noticed that there is a leadership deficit in our world. You might have noticed that.
Yeah, no. Everywhere you look.
And so, we talk about in marketing, like, what is the promise that you can deliver? Is there people out there that need that promise kept?
Mm-hmm.
So if you know your promise and what you can deliver, and there's a market for people to need that promise kept, now you've got a potential business.
Mm-hmm.
And then you begin to market to those people who need that promise kept. And you're the one to keep the promise.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
let's talk about, so you ran an automotive repair shop, Parkway
Mhm.
Automotive, for 25 years, right? Built it from nothing, because it was brand new for you as an idea you had in mind,
Right.
all the way up to a multi 7-figure business, very profitable. And then you transitioned out of that, and it was a period of time to the transition. And we're not talking about that today, but it's only happened because you built leaders within your company. I mean, dare I say, every employee had the leadership mindset because of the way you trained them. And as you were moving out of Parkway, you had this vision to start another company to help others, not just in your industry, automotive repair, but in any industry, because leadership, you're right, there's a deficit. People need to understand how to do this. So talk a little bit about that idea to start leadership, to start training, and then who are these yahoos next to you in the
Yeah.
picture?
Yeah.
Correct description.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes. I think that it really comes back to you and I helping 19 other shop owners across the country write their book. And so let's just start right there. My heart, having been a business owner, understanding the burden that small business owners carry in running a business. And I knew that in developing leadership, as we call it, that we want to shift the mindset of what it means to be a leader. And it doesn't mean I need to give the business owner something else to do. They got plenty to do. But
Right.
if I believe that I could best serve those business owners by developing leaders in their organization to become leaders. So then they have partners in leading. This whole idea that it's lonely at the top. You have a choice as to whether or not you want to be lonely at the top. You can build your silo as a leader of your organization, or you can choose. In fact, I'm out to change the word manager. I say we manage things, but we develop people. I want to change the name to, my name is Mike, and I'm the developer of people at my organization. I'm not the manager.
Love it.
And so what's happened for me is, as our business grew last year, I realized that I needed some certain skill sets to help me deliver my promise. Okay, because it's staying focused on a problem, very clear, very concise in what it is we do for people, for business owners. And we have business in multiple industries now. And so when I looked at my son Jeff, who worked for the Arkansas Department of Education, has a great education with Arkansas State University, and he worked for the Department of Education. He was a school teacher for 10 years, and saw that he had sort of reached his lid, we'll call it, within the world of education. Am I saying that? How would you
To a
describe
certain
it?
degree, yeah. There were some which we'll just be honest, teaching was getting boring. It was boring. I mean, I enjoyed what I was doing up to that point, but there were some areas that I knew I needed to grow in and develop, and I wasn't finding it there. There are still opportunities in education, but this opportunity presented itself, and you asked me to join you, and I was at a place mentally and with my career. I'm ready to change. I want to throw something though too, because leadership, even the idea of leadership, you started it as a course several years ago, because I took that course as a teacher. I was just doing my teaching and going to my school, but the mornings he would do these classes on calls, and so I would listen in on my drive to work, on my 25 to 30 minute drive into work, and that was transformational. Just listening to that, and it was clear that Dad had a product here that was needed to be developed further, and he realized that. You realized that, and it began to evolve. You began getting more clients in, more students to come take part in the class. And if I can speak on your behalf, it started to really grow, and it became more than just people from the automotive repair industry. I mean, I know you had me from the teaching world, but you also had some other individuals from the Department of Education. You had people from other different sectors of business, and it began to really flourish. People were demanding more of that.
Yeah, and then we discovered that it's actually the class itself. It's 15 weeks, so like it's not like what you got to be committed to.
Right.
And so what Jeff helped develop the workbook at a higher level for us that's more intentional for all the students. And then when we started looking at everything that's happened, we see that the class actually ends up being a funnel for potential coaches for whether it's individual coaching or company business coaching. We've got a couple of clients that are trying to look at succession plans, or having a succession plan with their children.
Yep.
Okay. And so it gets really tricky. We have a client that has 4 owners. They're all siblings of one company. And you want to talk about a interesting thing to navigate. And so then what happened is I began to see other opportunities that were there for us. Frank, I've known for a number of years, and in fact, he and I have been meeting every Saturday morning for the last 3 years, just friends, to talk about life and what it means to navigate the world that we each have. And he's from New York, and I'm from Arkansas, but somehow we find, as you said the other day, is like we're a lot more alike than you might think.
Yeah. I think that there's, Michael, our background, I would just say there's a ton of providence in the friendship that I have with Mike Davidson. That the Lord really prepared me to be his friend, and he prepared him to be my friend. There's just no question about that.
Absolutely, because that is definitely a God thing, Frank, for you to have some friends. I'm telling you.
I wasn't going to say it that way, Michael, but I think you're 100% right. I think you're 100% right.
Yeah.
I just want to season this a little bit. So I think it was 4 years ago. There was an ice storm here in Arkansas, and at the end of that ice storm, I broke my leg. I broke it in a significant way. I was broken in 10 places, needed significant surgery. It was a very long recovery. Thank heavens at that time, my job allowed me to work remotely. I was already working remotely prior to COVID. So I was able to work remotely while I was in recovery. But that lack of mobility and that very intense recovery period left me very isolated. And at that time, Mike came to me really as an answer to prayer, and said, look, I want to intentionally be your friend. And let's meet on Saturdays. And he met with me on Saturdays when I was on a walker and when I was on crutches and when I'm supposed to be walking and didn't. And then he forced me to walk 2 miles with him, forced 2-mile walks. It wasn't, it was as bad as it sounds, actually. A lot of the times it was hard for me. But
you ever seen a one-legged man walk? It's amazing.
It's hard. But I would say all that just to say this, in that time, we discovered this deep affinity for what it means to be a guy
Yeah.
who needs a friend and who wants to make a difference in his world. Right. And in that affinity, you know, I have worked in the corporate world. I worked for Fortune 100 companies. My last job had me reporting directly to the CFO of a global company. And it's really shocking that the kind of problems you might find in a local plumbing business or a local electrical business or a local auto shop, they're the same problems you find in major corporate worlds. And in fact, in the corporate world, you might find it a lot worse because there's so many more people and the cascading effect of failures of leadership. It's like throwing a big rock in a very big pool and getting a big splash and a lot of waves. So, you know, as Mike started to find more opportunities in this business, he and I talked a lot about whether or not there was room for me to come and help him. And honestly, I had a discussion in December with my boss, which led to where I am right now, which in Europe they call it garden leave. So it's a severance package, right? So I am right now working through my garden leave and finding the places that I fit well with Mike's organization. And again, I think it comes down to this, you know, Michael, it's interesting because when you teach leaders to be leaders, you're trying to teach leaders to make other leaders, right? And it comes down to this: can I lead myself? Do I know what my values are? And once I know what my values are and I'm leading myself, I can teach others to do the same. That's the process in a nutshell, right? That's the net benefit. And I would tell you this: I think most people who think that they can lead don't understand where they're leading because they don't understand their values. They don't understand, why do I do this? And not just from a company standpoint, but from a personal standpoint. Why do I do this? What's important to me? And do I want to create what's important to me in others? So that's why I'm here with you.
Yeah, that's good. It's a perspective of, when you say the word leadership to some, there's a thought of an external thought of leadership. Oh, I don't want to be a leader. But I would say that everyone's called to be a leader, even if it's just leading themselves. And so what we bring to the table for clients is the importance of internal leadership, not external. It's not about me leading a group of people. It's about leading one person first. And that would be this guy that's looking in the mirror, being self-aware, knowing my strengths, knowing my weaknesses well enough, and I'm willing to bring others around me to help fulfill my weaknesses. Not that I'm not going to spend time, if I can say it this way, putting a dress on a pig. It just frustrates the pig. So I'm not going to do that for my weaknesses. Instead, as a leader, I'm going to bring people around me that I know, love, and trust, that know, love, and trust me. And as a leader, I'm going to be a better leader because of their strengths, not because of me.
Right. No, and that's so good, because I mean, in our culture, everything is now outsourced. Right. And instead of building a team, we isolate ourselves as the entrepreneur. It's my company, so I'm going to outsource. I'm going to have a fractional this and a fractional that and a fractional this. And there are places for all of that, but it's not building the leadership. And I love your model. And Frank, you really talked about it. It models what Christ did with building his disciples to be disciple makers. And I was at my church the other night, and we're getting ready to launch the life groups, right? And the pastor said, if you're to be a disciple maker, you have to pour into somebody else and build them up so that they can pour into somebody else. And until they pour into somebody else and make another disciple, you're not a disciple maker. You're not the chain is not complete yet. And that's really what you're doing, is helping organizations, entrepreneurs understand to build the leaders who will have that mindset to serve others, to build the leaders down through the organization and work with your areas of strength so that you have a more solid leadership team so that you can make a greater impact in your people, your profits, everything else. Is that a fair kind of summary?
It is. I say that people within your organization, people will be what they see.
Mm.
So whatever you want your organization to be like, then be like that.
Yeah.
And it starts with, as has already been mentioned, about your personal values. And so the difficulty for leadership is, how do I transfer those values sort of down the line? But it starts with hiring people that are in alignment with my values.
Yeah.
Because if I get that wrong, then I'm going to have a hard time transferring those values to this other person. That ultimately, you think of entrepreneurs, we start something because we really want to serve. We believe we have something that people want, and in the way that we think they want it, and so we do it. But then when we start hiring people around us, if they can't catch the vision, if we aren't clear on our vision, and be able to transfer that, and it was Truett Cathy who said that a vision rarely repeated is quickly forgotten. And we don't have a conduit or venues or a way to keep that vision in front of our people in a real way. And the best way is not the banner on the wall. The best way is how your own character and how you display your values on a regular basis, so that they will then be what you want them to be to your customer. But if you're not that to them, they won't be that to them, to those customers. Won't happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And leadership is an inside game. I remember the first Maxwell book I ever read was Developing the Leader Within You.
Yeah.
My second one was Developing the Leaders Around You, right?
Yeah.
I think he's written a couple books since then.
Yeah.
But
About 83.
83. He's got more books than he does years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, how do you work with organizations? Because this is a different style, different type of leadership mentality around, because I mean, there are leadership courses everywhere, but they, dare I say, they fall short, and they're many times short-lived because they're not dealing with what you're dealing with. And talk about, what are the roles that Jeffrey and Frank are bringing to the table that are who was it? Was it Fonzie? No, it was Rocky, right? Remember Rocky and Adrian, right? He's like,
Yeah.
I got gaps and you got gaps, and together we got no gaps. It seems like you got two people who are filling your gaps, right? Talk about that.
Well, and maybe I can even let them speak to how they think they fill the gaps.
Oh, that'd be good.
What I think.
That would be very insightful to see if the gaps are the same gaps you think. So Jeffrey, what gaps are you filling, dude?
Oh, well, first of all, I mean, Dad is he's the driver of this ship.
Yes.
He's got the vision, he's got the big ideas, and quite frankly too, he's very good at just at fishing, seeing what's needed out there. He's a voracious reader. Is that the right word? Maybe
Absolutely.
reads extensively.
I can't keep up with
I can't keep up. Like, it is. There's a stack back here. I think his head's covering. It's a huge stack, and that's just a fraction of what he's reading this year. There's more books behind the camera, but he's out getting the clients. He's out identifying the issues. He's the one speaking to people day in and day out. And I mean, Frank and I are joining him in this effort, but really what we're doing is trying to catch up to what he's been doing for quite some time. Where I think where Dad came and asked me to fill some gaps, it was going to be in a lot of those the day-to-day operations, the more of the detailed work. You know, he's here coming in, interacting with clients and bringing them into the organization. I'm here to set the table and make sure that what they were promised is what they are actually receiving. It's one of the things I'll do, is constantly come back to those questions. You know, is this in alignment with our values? Is this what we're really trying to do? Are we really on mission? Are we doing what we say we wanted to do? Are we fulfilling the promises that we're making with our clients? And so, you know, whether it's through check-ins, a series of questions we might ask the clients, questions I'm asking him throughout just the day-to-day operations. And then on top of that, I do some administrative tasks as well to make sure things are just, you know, the engine's running smoothly behind the scenes. That's where I'm seeing my current role, and I am growing in the area of networking, building networks, attending networking functions. But I'm also developing as a coach, and that's one thing he has me on the fast track to is getting that coaching training through the John Maxwell team, and then actually doing some coaching sessions with clients. I've already been joining him in those sessions, but I'll starting next month. I got 2 of my own clients, so here we go.
Yeah.
Well, and that's great. And if everybody's listening to it, just go back and re-listen to what Jeffrey just said. I mean, that's the model. I remember learning this from Maxwell in one of his books, right? I think back then he had a 4-step mentoring model, right? He says, I do it, and you watch me. You do it, and I watch you, and you do it. And we just saw that played out in what Mike is building a leadership into Jeffrey, who's going to go out and continue building into others. That's what we're talking about here. So, all right, Jeffrey sets the table. Frank, what do you do?
So I think the real honest answer, you said transparency. You told us to be transparent, Michael. So I'm going to be very transparent. Transparently, I am new to our organization. I'm new. Okay. But I think that part of what I am bringing to the organization right now is what Mike and I have always done on Saturdays, which is really to talk and to think. I think one of Mike's greatest strengths is listening to learn. And I hope that I also have that, so that we talk, we listen to each other, and then what we realize at the end of it is better than what we started with. And here's a great example. Mike talks about this 15 principles of leadership class. Jeffrey talked about it too. That's one of the products that we have. Another product that Mike has is hiring for keeps. Okay. And if you think about these two things, are they directly related? Well, maybe not. They weren't invented directly to each other, right?
Weren't.
But what it turns out is that if you take the 15 principles of leadership class, right? If you take that class and then you say, okay, I want to apply this to my business. What do I do? Well, I think I've got to find people who fit what I want to follow my leadership, right? So that's hiring. But then there's also another thing that Mike has done, which is called vision and culture, right? Where you're actually hitting the reset button on the culture of your business. I'm lining all these out really just to say this: to see these things as a visionary path for your business, to move from I lead me to I have others who can lead, to together we establish the vision, and then we sustain that culture, right? That this Mike and I and Jeff are together having these conversations where we're saying, this is the trajectory of our business, right? To teach others to go from point A to point B and to implement these principles across that internal value chain of the business, right? And I don't want to get too buzzwordy here, okay? But I think that my role really is to be another resource, another seasoned resource for Mike to be able to, as we are developing more clients, and gosh, I feel like right now it's going to be an all or nothing fall, right? I mean, it's kind of there. We're to develop these clients and to be another person, because Mike couldn't possibly teach all the people who we have in the pipeline right now, right? So we needed another teacher, and I think even you, Michael, would say I'm not too bad if you set me up to teach, right? So
you got some skill sets there, and the other skill set you have, Frank, that you didn't really talk about, but I'm going to put it out here because I think it really does summarize a lot about who Frank Turk is, and that's radical common sense.
It's because I'm from New York, Michael. We just came from a networking thing, and they're like, "Oh, you're from New York. We know you."
Yeah.
Straight.
Well, you have a way of listening to things and processing it and feeding it back and going, what about this, right? And it's like, wow, I never thought about that, right? And
thank you. It's true.
Well, you're welcome, and it's fun, and I don't even think you remember this, and we'll take a little tangent here just to talk about that. So you and I sat down. It was at youth group, right after youth group at Bible Church one of these days, years and years and years ago, and I shared with you my idea for Paperback Expert.
Yes.
And you had been you'd owned a Christian bookstore at one time and different things, and you sat there and you listened to me, and you looked at me and you said, Michael, that's brilliant. And I remember that to this day, Frank. That spoke life into me. So thank you for that. To go, wow, maybe this is going to work, right? So but radical common sense, to be able to listen to somebody, feedback some things, and take your years of experience in industry and to apply it to people. And the one thing that I want our audience to understand is there's a thread of DNA between all of this. This is about leadership, but it's about relationships with people. And if you're building a company and your focus is on top line revenues or bottom line profits, you're missing the boat. Those are byproducts of everything Mike Davidson and his team will help you create. Those are great. We love those. But I love your focus on people, internal leadership, moving that to the next level, building people up so they can go and do it. That's all people and relationships. And I think that's really the heartbeat behind all that you're doing. Fair?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that is fair. And I think one of the challenges for leaders is to really understand what it really means to be authentic. We even had this conversation earlier this morning. And there's some things that fuel authenticity that doesn't come natural for people. One of the pieces or one of the ingredients of that fuel is truth. And leaders have to do two things. They have to be seers and visionaries. They have to see the truth, what's happening right now in my business. And they have to be visionary of what do I want it to be. Rarely is that the same. I hope not, because innovation is what's going to drive your business, that change. The other is really transparency. And I define transparency in two ways. There's a transparency that's a door where everything is shown. Okay. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I'm more of a window. You need to have a window of transparency as a leader, that you need to be willing to do that. And so these are, and then I think the third piece is really there's a level of humility that must take place as a leader. It's called being vulnerable is another way of saying it. That I think that's the third piece. And if you want to really be challenged about being vulnerable, is hire your son to work with you and say, I need you to speak into my life.
Yeah.
Or have a mentor that you would say, I need you to speak into my life.
Yeah.
And I think that if the leader, because the truth is that we want the people that work for us, we want them to be truthful. We want them to be vulnerable and humble. And, we want them to be, this idea of being authentic. We want that for them. But the truth is that a leader cannot solve any problem in his business if he doesn't know the truth.
Yeah.
So if he's not displaying that himself and what it means to be truthful and saying where I failed and what can we learn from this, to create an environment where the employees are engaged in the process of innovation.
Yeah.
And no one, and too many times a leader creates the environment where people are scared to talk of retribution, fear of failure.
Yes. Innovation does not take place where there's fear. It just won't happen.
Right.
And to dispel fear, you have to be vulnerable and show everyone this is a working, growing environment. You're going to make mistakes. I, as your leader, am going to make mistakes, but together we'll learn from those mistakes and move this place forward.
Yeah. Man, that's so good. And that transparency, Mike, you were talking about that because, I run a company with my son, who's my chief operating officer, and I've had to do that. Right. And he and I had a conversation last week, and he's got me doing some things that I just don't like. And I told him, I said, Caleb, I hate these things. I don't want to do these things. He's like, well, why is that? So I kind of unpacked a little bit. And here's what happened. We just let it sit. And I said, but I'm going to do it because you want me to do it. And it's important. So I'm going to do it. I just don't like it. And then I found out a couple, 3 days later, he came back to me he's like, hey, why don't you do this? And it was the same objective, just a different way, because he heard me because I was transparent. But I'm able to be really transparent with him, and we're building a great company culture because I've learned to submit to my son, because he's doing certain things in the company that are his unique strengths. I'm terrible at them. That's why I brought him in, and I'm developing him, and eventually he'll take over the company, right? But kind of like what you're doing with Jeffrey, and then we need that outside voice like Frank to speak in and have those conversations. And this is leadership, folks. This is what it's about. It's not about you domineering over people, or dare I say, even sending them to a course or giving them a book. Yes, those are important, but putting them through a 15-week process where they're meeting every week with Mike and his team and diving in and learning who they are, because when they stand strong on their own feet as a leader and they have confidence built on that foundation of humility, then things really are going to start moving and changing in your company. Do you see that happening in the companies and the people that you're working with, that transformation internally and then externally?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we do say we transform employees into leaders who grow leaders. And some of the transformations that I've seen and just feedback from students as we followed up with them and later, they talk to me about how it's made a difference in their home life.
Yeah.
Because whether you're talking about work or home or wherever, and to what Frank said about being in the corporate world, and it seems to even be magnified versus a small business with some of the things you deal with. The reason it's the same is because you're dealing with people.
Right.
Yes.
And
100%.
that's the common denominator. And so where so many entrepreneurs they start off as technicians, they're technical, they have a widget, they know how to build the widget, they start making the widget. And then they see they need help, so they hire help, and now they become a manager of people. Okay. And then they stay in these places where they're managers and technicians, and they totally forget about this thing called an entrepreneur, which is where they started. They had an entrepreneur seizure and they said, I want to be an entrepreneur. So they start doing that. And they can lose sight of that. So one of the things that we help do is, if we can develop your people to be leaders, you can get back into your entrepreneur lane. So that's the hope that we can give leaders. And I think part of the shift that needs to take place even for leaders is that a lot of times how they'll put someone that's really good in production into a leadership role because, they think they are, or maybe they've been there, they punched the clock for 20 years and they kind of deserve that place. But what we need, what the concept or the posture, the understanding that leaders need to have is that when you're the technician in the business, you need technical competence.
Yeah.
You need that. As a leader, you need relationship competence. And that's a new world. That's something new.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike has a thing that he says. He has a lot of things that he says, which is what I like about it. He has this thing that he says where we manage things and we develop people. I think he said it once already in the podcast, but this is a clear example of that, right? That if you're actually empowering the technical person, that person who's actually the frontline person who's producing, to do what they do to the best of their ability, right? That enables you to step back and say, I can make sure that all the parts they need are ordered. I can make sure that the customer knows what they're going to pay for and gets billed for it and we get paid. I can make sure that the lights stay on, right? That's because I have somebody who's equipped to manage himself. And when we say that, I also think that there's the other hazard where people think, I'm just going to tell that person to manage themselves and they'll be fine. No, they have to know what you want. They have to know what you want for them, and they have to know what the customer wants from them so that they can do those things together, right?
And they have to be able to manage and lead themselves, which a lot of people have never been taught this.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so weird, Michael. We talked about this a lot in the last couple of weeks because it just came out. It's this Gallup poll about employee engagement. Have you heard about this? Have you read about this at all? So Mike, give the 1,000-foot on that, and then I have something to say about that.
All of your clients, all of your listeners, Michael, need to read the 2024 Gallup poll that's just released on employee engagement. If you Google employee engagement Gallup poll, you'll find it.
Okay.
But ultimately, we say that 24% of employees have no idea what's expected of them. Only 24% know what's expected of what I'm saying. Right. I said that wrong.
Right.
Turn it over.
Right. 76% of employees do not know what's expected of them.
Yes.
Think about how crippling that is to our economy, how crippling that is to any individual business, that 76% of employees do not know what's expected of them, right? Now, you can say lead yourself, But the truth is that you have to know what's expected in order to lead yourself, right? And that's why all of these things are important. A leader who knows how to lead himself, a leader who knows how to express expectations, a leader who knows how to teach that person once they have the expectations, how do I respond to that? And then this ability to communicate back, right? The feedback loop that says, you've given me this authority and you've given me this responsibility, but I lack this to complete the task. How do we close that gap? That's so huge. And it's obvious that's not what's happening in the world, right? It's not what's happening in the world. And I would just look, I know that we're here. I know we have a business to help solve this problem, but I would just say this: if you have a business, you should ask yourself how many of the 76% of workers in America is represented in your business that they don't really know. And that's why it's hard to manage them. That's why it's hard to get the result from them. That's why it's hard for to see that your customers are giving you 3-star Google reviews instead of 5-star Google reviews, right? These things are all connected.
Yeah.
So go ahead,
I
Michael.
was going to say, dare I say, that is a leadership issue.
Yep,
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
It is.
Yeah.
So one of the products that we help companies develop, and I'm going to let Jeffrey speak to positional contracts.
Oh yeah.
and their
I
content.
do, just to piggyback though on Frank, right quick. It's that it's not that employees don't know some of the day-to-day details of their job. They know they may have to run payroll, or they have to check this box or do this widget. It's, why am I here? What's the ultimate objective here? What are the results that you're looking for? And then what Dad just mentioned, one of the ways we help employers and business owners do this with their employees is through this system we call positional contracts. And in the positional contract, we tend to think of job descriptions. There's some similarities there, because in a positional contract, we do outline what's expected of the employee. What are their responsibilities? But this goes way further than just, here's a list of things to do and get it done by X date. It's actually showing the employee, here's the outcome I'm looking for. Here are the final results you are responsible for doing. And I'm going to break this out for you. Here's going to be your strategic responsibilities. What is going to be some of these outcomes that we want? And then what are the tactical responsibilities? What are going to be some of the day-to-day operations that help you get to that strategic outcome that I've already described? Then if that's not deep enough, then you actually go further and say, here is how I'm going to empower you. You actually list out for the employee the authority that they have to accomplish their objectives. And I mean, Michael, it can be anything from a dollar amount that you have the authority to spend to accomplish your objectives. It might be the authority over this individual or team to direct them in such a way. We've worked with different types of clients. There's all different types of authority. And it's interesting, as we sat down with some of our clients, we try to get the employer who's helping us write the contract and the employee who is receiving the contract. And the conversations that come out of this are phenomenal, nothing short of amazing, as they're talking, and the employee's sitting there like, you're asking me to do this, but for this to happen, I'm going to need this authority to do that. And you just see these light bulbs go off in the employer, like, oh, I never thought of that.
No wonder I'm getting 50
No
calls
wonder
today.
I'm struggling here. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, we had this the other day with a client who she's struggling getting some of her guys to enter in their hours for payroll. Well, by expressing that issue to the employer, they were able to discuss ways to empower that employee to actually get the results she needed, get the guys to do it. And it involved forcing them to come to the office to get a paper check if they didn't put in their hours. It's like amazing. And then the third piece is the accountability. We show the employees, now, how do I as the employer hold you accountable to the responsibilities I've given you? And that's, of course, a crucial piece. It's not that you're getting micromanaged. It's not that your every detail is being watched, but knowing that there are going to be these structures in place to make sure my job is being accomplished and the outcomes are being are being done. It's healthy for an employee to know that and to know what to be looking for.
100%.
yeah.
100%. So here's what I want my audience to really, really understand. Everything we've talked about applies to you, number one. And number two, the solutions that Mike and his team bring to the table have been developed through 25 plus years of being an entrepreneur, of sitting in your seat, of building an organization that is thriving to this day, of helping other organizations. So it's not like Mike read a book and got this framework and now he applies this framework that somebody else. No. This is stuff that has been birthed and grown from your seat, your chair. And having, just like Jeffrey said, having that outside set of eyes who can talk with you and walk with you and help you and guide and direct on a regular basis is invaluable. This is not some short-term course. This is about transforming you as a person, as a leader, transforming your organization, building leaders who build leaders to change their lives, to change your business, change your family, your community. This is why I wanted to have you guys here, and we could talk ad nauseum about all the things that y'all do, because I'm so excited about what you've got going on. But let's help people find out, where do they find out more about you and all that you've got going on, and how do they have a conversation to go, I'm just totally clueless, I don't even know where to start. What would be their next step?
No, okay. Well, I mean, you can go to our website. That's probably what we direct people to the most, is leadershiplane.net. And at the very top of that website, there's a little place that says schedule a call. We love sitting down with clients. It's a virtual conversation. It's for an hour, and it's an opportunity for you to share what you're dealing with. And there's a form we get a little heads up from you as to what you want to be discussing in that discovery call. But then, yeah, we sit down and we ask you a series of questions, and we begin forming that relationship.
Yeah, we are.
That's step number one.
You might be surprised. We have a process. It's called we call it discovery, design, develop, and maintain leadership. That's really what we're saying. So first, we discover from you what it is you think you need help with, and we're really trying to discover for ourselves. It's really designed for us to determine, do we have the resources to really serve you well? Because you talked about servanthood. Then we design a proposal that says, this is what we heard, this is what we understand, and this would be our plan if we were to work together. This is what it would look like, and this is what it would cost. And then we have a meeting with that, and then give you some days to think it through. And then we go to work, and that's when we go from discovery to design to start developing it. A culture of excellence. What does that mean? Those, some of the things. What's the outcome you want? What are the KPIs you want for our time together? We want to identify those now.
Yes.
And what are those KPIs? And then that's our measuring tool. You design the tool, you tell us what you want, and then we say, well, can we deliver that? Wow. And then to maintain is just, how do we keep this moving in the right direction for you, that it don't lose what you've put so much effort and time and resources into?
And I would just add this. I think it's super critical to understand this. It doesn't cost anything to have a discovery call.
Oh, yeah.
We would spend an hour with you. We would love to spend an hour with you to talk about the things that you think are important or confusing or missing from your own personal development or from your organization. And that's where we build the plan. And then we can talk about what would it cost to do that, right? But the discovery call, that's on us, because we want to hear, we want to listen to learn, and we want to absolutely find the ways that we would be useful to you. And maybe we learned this today. Maybe we're not the right ones. Maybe we know somebody who's better for you, and we would recommend them.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey has really made it clear how important it is that when we do those discovery calls, that we make sure that if you came to us to do a discovery call, we're going to make sure that we help you in that 1 hour. It's not just about us obtaining data and information. We want you to we believe that our objective in that call is to make sure that you get help right then in some way. It may not be all the help you need, but it's going to be something. And so Jeffrey is sure to keep us on track to make sure that we deliver that for even the discovery call. So there's going to be value for you even in just setting a discovery call.
That's awesome. That's part of setting the table, right, Jeffrey?
That's
And
what he does.
making sure that table is not set with paper plates, but with the best china or paper plate.
You got it.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, hey, if you ever need a job.
That's right. That's right. That's awesome. Hey, audience, I mean, I cannot give my recommendation higher than Mike Davidson and his team, Jeffrey and Frank Turk. Leadership lane. What lane are you in right now in terms of leadership with your company? What are you doing to develop yourself? What are you doing to develop your leaders who develop other leaders, to build your organization, to impact the lives of people that you work with? Reach out to them. Have one of those 1-hour discovery calls, and I assure you, I don't make many promises in life, but I promise you, you will walk away with help and with deeper relationships in working with some guys who are at an all-time different level, honestly, in their character, in who they are and what they do and how they deliver those promises. Leadershiplane.net is the place. I'm going to have all that in the show notes so you can reach out to them. Gentlemen, this has been epic. This has been one of the best podcasts I've ever done, because I love you guys, each and every one of you. I love what you do, and I want to support you any way I can. Thank you for being true to who you are, who God made you, and adding so much value to other entrepreneurs everywhere. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, you bet, Michael. Thanks for having us.